Hello, I'm Drew Festini from the Open Source Hardware Association, and today we're going to have a presentation from one of our Open Hardware Summit 2020 speakers, Libby Rose Striegl. Let me pass it over here to Libby. All right, hello.
Hi there.
All right, I'm going to do full screen for you.
Well, hi, everybody. I didn't actually get to talk at the Open Hardware Summit, so I'm really happy to be able to do this little bit of a do-over. And I'm coming to you today from the Media Archaeology Lab, or my favorite infinite nostalgia machine. So I'm going to give you, as I kind of talk about some stuff, I'm also going to give you a little bit of a tour. I will warn everybody when I'm going to move the camera around, because I know sometimes that causes a little bit of nausea. But so I think about nostalgia a lot because I work in a place that looks like this. We are one of the largest collections of functional obsolete technology in North America. Definitely one of the largest that lets people come in and play with things when we're not in the middle of a pandemic. So we have kind of a mix of everything. And I was struck by one of the things that Sophie Kravitz said in her keynote 10 years ago last month about there being already so much stuff in the world. Because I live in one of the places that is full of some of that stuff that already exists in the world. And part of how I came into both retro tech and open source technology was through nostalgia for a specific piece of older tech, and through wanting to get that older tech to work with the modern world a little bit. So I started playing around with dot matrix printers a few years ago and trying to get them to function with my modern computer, which led to having a wireless dot matrix printer with a Raspberry Pi brain inside of it. But there are a bunch of other projects that are like that. And a lot of the work we do here at the Media Archaeology Lab depends on projects that are not necessarily open source hardware, but that are in the same spirit of opening things up and sharing what we do with other people so that they can do the same things. So in this room, we have an Apple II that is connected to the Ethernet through a project called Ethernet. We also have that same Apple II has an expansion on it that allows us to store files on a USB stick. So if those of you who are familiar with retro tech are familiar with all of this stuff, but those who are not, these are really interesting projects that build off of already existing open source technologies, or that build off of things that that are sort of open protocols existing in the world and allow us to interact with this old stuff that we have lots of in new and exciting and interesting ways. On top of that, there's like, I can't count how many different wireless modems for Commodore 64s there are. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a tour through what we have just by pointing. So in the corner over here, we have our, in the very far corner, we have our Altair 8800B. We have an Osborne 1 next to that. We have an Apple II next to that wearing an Apple III monitor. An Apple III after that. This whole shelf here is Apple IIe up through the lovely iMac G4 with its goofy articulated monitor. I'm going to turn the camera so we can see the other wall, just a warning in case you're seasick. So we're done there. On this wall, we have our Trash 80 and our PC 5150 and that pink Commodore SX64 that I promised some of you on Twitter you would get to see. We have our Commodore 64 and our Amiga and our TI 99 4A, our Canon Cat. All across the top, we have our ABC80, which is a Swedish clone of the Apple II. We have our Ace 1000, our Franklin Ace 1000, which is another Apple II clone. We have a pile of TI-99 4As because they get so hot that we have to swap them out sometimes. They're not the best, not the best cooling on those. Beyond that, you'll see our ZX81 and our kind of hiding our TRS-80 color microcomputer. In the corner back there, we've got our little ZX Spectrum clone that someone hand built in the USSR in the 80s by stealing a bunch of parts. Back down on the main shelf next to the Canon Cat, we have our little Klein computer, which is an East German clone of the ZX Spectrum. And beyond that, we have our Indy. And then we also have a whole bunch of portables and luggables and things of that nature. And so because we have all of this stuff, we have this sort of interesting, I'm trying to read what people are saying at the same time. We have this sort of interesting mix of stuff that was sort of open because that's just what you do before people really thought about the nature of open source hardware versus proprietary hardware, and then things that were very much extremely proprietary and very much locked down. So I'm going to read you a little bit from our Altair 8800s book. This is in the operating manual, the thing that everybody got when they got a kit to build the machine, which was, it is not necessary to understand the detailed electronic operation of each part of the computer to make effective use of the machine. However, a general understanding of each of the various operating sections is important. So imagine if that was how we were told to use our computers now. And then the very next page is a full CPU diagram. So we have a lot of tech like this where everything is actually like, it was just open by default because that's what you did. And then we can watch in our progression of Apple devices going from the Apple II that you can just sort of lift open to the iMac G4 that takes a hammer to open. This sort of closing down of hardware as things became more common in the world. So I'm interested in that complication of things that got closed down on communities that were used to them being open, and the way that we've kind of gone backwards and retroactively opened stuff. A lot of the projects that we use are what I would call retroactive openness, things that have been taken apart and reconfigured so that we can use them now. Here's another good example of devices that came with their full schematic. So here's the full schematic for this Morse code trainer that we got. And that's just the last page of the user manual for that. So that's our front room. That's some of what we have in here. And I'm going to take us on a little walk. The camera's going to move. If you get nauseous, I'll tell you when I've set it back down again. So we're going to walk through. We have this front room. We have a little library back here. I'll walk by it. We have a little library with all of our manuals and things. This is another lab, so I'm just going to point you at the ceiling. Back here, we have our typewriter and word processor collection. We have our audio device collection, 8-track cassette, vinyl, and our Edison disc phonograph. We have a bunch of analog tech on this side, and then on this side, trying to turn slowly so you don't get sick. On this side, we have a bunch of mobile devices and palm top computing. One of my favorite pieces is our little Atari portfolio, which if anybody likes Terminator, that's the thing that was used to hack the ATM in the beginning of one of the movies. And then back here we have some examples of stuff that's been really thoroughly opened up. So this is a Vectrex. I'm going to turn it on really quick. It's going to beep kind of loudly. Ding, beep. and make terrible noises. So Vectrix was a vector graphics gaming system from the 80s. It's basically an oscilloscope that you play games on. And since then, we've gotten these lovely multi-cart cartridges that give us the ability to access everything that's been made for the device, either commercially released or otherwise. So we've got a lot of stuff in here that is user made, and a bunch of stuff that was released commercially or ported over to the system. And so that's one of those things that's been very thoroughly opened up as we've gone along, and people have continued to be interested. I'm going to turn you all around so you can see our game corner. So the game corner is one of our biggest nostalgia pieces for everyone. So behind me, you can see we have pretty much all the big major things. Nintendo systems, Xbox, Sega's, PlayStation 2. We don't have a PlayStation 1 because people either hang on to them or break them. And we only want things that are functional. You can see our Famicom up on the top, our Atari 2600. We do have a copy of that terrible E.T. game if you ever come out here. It's really bad. It's as bad as they say it is. Our Intellivision below us. And the Intellivision is another interesting piece of retro tech history because it fell into that category of like how televisions used to have their schematics published on the inside. I took one apart recently because we were trying to figure out what was wrong with it. So this board was meant to be repaired and to be retrofitted. All of the ICs that are important, that are not ROM, actually have sockets that we can pull them out with, which is unusual and lovely to find in things. It was actually easy to open up also, which is unusual and lovely to find with things. But also the one that we have that is functional came with this repair service flyer. So Mattel was at that point thinking of things as not only user serviceable but also as like open enough that you would be able to order the parts and know fully how it worked. The user manual for the Intellivision also includes a copy of the schematic, and I think it's relatively easy to find a screen print for the circuit board too, so you could technically build the whole thing from scratch. Anyway, all about today is that we have interesting connection. We have
It broke up there for a little bit.
all of this stuff, all these things. And I'm thinking a lot about the fact that today is
I don't think you have
the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. I'm going to walk back up to the front room where our connection's a little better. So today is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, and we still have all of this stuff, and we've got newer old stuff that I don't have here to show you, but we do have newer old stuff, and we're constantly making it obsolete. And I wonder what would happen if we all started to think more about how to prolong the lives of the things that already exist, whether that's by creating add-ons hardware-wise that expand them in ways that allow us to continue to use them the way that they're intended, or to update them. I also wonder what we can do with things that already exist in terms of repurposing or reopening them. We have all of this stuff, and so I wanted to show you all around here today, just in part because it's a good source of inspiration. Nostalgia is one of those things that can be either a force for like getting lost in the past and staying forever in that history and never coming back out of it. But it also can be a force for getting really inspired and figuring out ways to make the past mistakes, or the ways to make our past successes as well continue into the future in a way that is positive and pro-social, and can continue to stick with the philosophy of open source, and continue to extend our spirit, our communal spirit, into the future. Alicia on the open source hardware blog at the beginning of this month, which feels like a year ago, posted about the moral responsibility of sharing knowledge in a crisis, and it's really hard to not think about this bigger crisis that's happening, not just the immediate pandemic crisis, but also the climate crisis that's continuing to happen, and has continued to happen for my entire lifetime, and that we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of knowing that it was a problem today on Earth Day. So it's an invitation to think about the ways that we can reorganize ourselves and reorganize how we think about hardware and what we can do that isn't making more necessarily, but maybe making better. And so I'm gonna leave you all with a little bit more of a tour through our collection, and I'd love to answer questions about what else we have. But my sort of call here is for those of you who are interested in retro tech and thinking about the ways that we can move forward with the things that already exist in the world and that work and continue to work. How we can keep using what we have instead of making more, because we don't have much more space. So I'm happy to take questions from you all now.
There was one earlier asking if there was a TAM on the top shelf. TAM? I'm not sure what that.
Which top shelf they're talking about, but we don't have a TAM in here, no. If there's any other questions, though.
One of the things I was wondering about is I've heard of efforts to like try and increase the rights for people to like repair equipment. Like it seems like a lot of things you're showing had a greater degree of repairability, and they came with the schematics. Are you aware of any like current efforts to? I've heard of something. I think the right to repair or something like this.
Oh yeah, for sure. Right to repair is a big deal. There was actually a pretty huge success recently. So if you are at all familiar with right to repair, you know that a lot of it centers around John Deere tractors and the ability to repair tractors that are owned by farmers but that have sort of locked software. No, we don't have a 20th anniversary Mac. We have boxes from a bunch of stuff. Hi, Abhishek. I can talk about how I use RetroTech in my practice. So I am at this point, because I just defended my PhD dissertation literally 2 days ago. I had extended myself mostly into that work, but in my art practice, I do a lot of sort of exploring the ways that I can link up retro technology, especially printers, because I'm fascinated with printers, link up retro technology with modern technology. So one of the projects that I've done previously was building large-scale installation using a dot matrix printer that had a wire, like a Raspberry Pi brain embedded in it, so I could use it as a wireless printer. I still can use it as a wireless printer just for day-to-day use, but for that purpose, I was expanding it into a huge, thanks Abhishek, I was expanding it into a huge paper loop printer for sort of concrete poetry. I also use retro tech to talk about openness, and some less retro than others. I use the One Laptop per Child laptops that we have a massive collection of. You can see one on the top left corner of that shelf there, one of the One Laptop per Child laptops. But I've used those for sort of performative mesh networking, and also for just demonstrating the potential of mesh networking and of alternative networking practices as well. And we have like 20 of them. And they're great. They're very weird. See if there are other questions.
I was wondering, are there any current like consumer electronics that have like a good story when it comes to like openness and repairability, like things that people can support?
Unfortunately, we've gotten into this place of being so locked down. Motorola has made a pretty good commitment to repairability on their phones. We have a lot of work to do in terms of getting consumer electronics back to a place of actual repairability, though. There's so much, so much that needs rethinking in terms of the way we do everything. Let's see, I've got a question about writing software that would run on those machines. We have one of our volunteers works with a group that has been writing a new platformer game for the Apple II. But they're intending it, they're very serious hobbyists. They're intending it to be like run on the hardware, and then emulators are sort of secondary. There are a lot of people in the community that have these devices at home, and so they're writing for the original hardware. Not a lot that would be coming from emulators to us for the most part, but some for sure. And then old artifacts from other lineages. I would love to get old automata and stuff. A lot of that stuff is so incredibly valuable. It's so hard to get it. Someone says they have 17 old Macs at home. Sorry, that just makes me laugh. So it's hard to get things that are of that sort of vintage that are really sort of priceless. So most of our stuff is the oldest that we have is like late 1800s, and most of it is for media production or consumption. So whether that's writing devices or graphics devices or cameras or things like that. My own personal interest takes me into automata and stuff, but we haven't extended our collection that way yet. is the story about repairability better for server or industrial products versus current consumer things? I think it's kind of all the same. We've gotten to this place of things just being replaced and tossed as opposed to repaired and maintained. So it's we've gotten to a place where it's much cheaper to just toss it than it is to like keep running older stuff. And there's this kind of constant push for newer, better, faster, as opposed to like stable, long-term, and maintained. So I think that unfortunately there's not a better story anywhere. Do we have other questions coming from anywhere?
There aren't any additional ones in the Discord that I see.
Anything on, I don't know are the live comments coming from StreamYard or from YouTube?
Oh, they're from YouTube, yeah. Oh. So the YouTube, the comments on YouTube you're seeing through the StreamYard here.
Okay, cool.
So I think that was, I don't think you missed any. There was, Jeffrey asked about other lineages, but I think
that's what I was
you talked about that, yeah.
And things like that. Yeah, I wish we did.
So when things get back to normal, is this something that people can visit if they're in your area?
Absolutely. So normally when we are open to the public, usually 6 days a week for a varying number of hours on those days. We welcome people to come in and work on projects of their own or propose things to us or just experiment. We have sort of varying base of volunteers who host our open house hours that are all capable of different levels of help and different kinds of help. So people who specialize in particulars or that are more sort of broad general knowledge. But you're also welcome to just come in and play video games. We have a lot of them.
Awesome. In what city are you located in?
We are in Boulder, Colorado, on the campus of the University of Colorado.
Awesome.
And I can't believe I forgot to say that at the beginning. So the Media Archaeology Lab is the brainchild of our director, Dr. Lori Emerson, but has grown, I think, beyond what she ever thought it would be. And we've recently acquired a huge collection of additional computers to add to our on display collection now. So what we have on display is about 1/10 of what we actually have. So we have a really enormous collection for people to experiment with.
Awesome. Well, I've been to the university, I think last year, to visit Alicia's lab, the Blow Things Up lab. So
yeah,
when I'm back again, I will hope to come see it.
So I also, while Alicia was out, I was the interim director at the Blow Things Up lab too. So I managed this space and also was interim director at the Blow Things Up lab for the last 8 months or so.
Awesome. And I guess I should explain for people that aren't familiar with it, it's a makerspace that's at the university.
Yeah, it's the student and community makerspace. So.
Yes. Awesome. I don't see any additional questions. So yeah, thank you very much for doing this talk. It's kind of fun to have a bonus talk after the summit back in March.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you all for joining me.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.